Welcome to F1 Unhinged. I can't even start this with a straight face. I'm Josh. That's Tyler. Let's go. Oh Jesus! It's been a week. It's
Is that what an
been
hour and 40 minutes of pre-show does to you?
yeah. It's been a week to be alive. Let's just get into the show. Obviously, as everyone in the world is fucking paying attention to, there's probably gonna be some delays in the world racing calendar this upcoming month. To put it mildly, F1 should actually be relatively unaffected the first couple races of the season. That changes drastically once we get to what race 4 is Bahrain.
3, I think.
No, I think it's 4 this year because I think we're doing China, Japan because of Ramadan.
Okay. So it's race 4, and then Qatar is 5.
Yeah. So we don't know how much that's going to affect F1 right now. We do know WEC, man. I think they're in a lot more trouble. They're only a couple weeks out from testing in Qatar, and what is supposed to be their first race of the year there. And I don't think anyone is very optimistic that that's going to happen right now.
So I'm going to pose a question before we get super deep into this. We've already seen Kim Illman kind of post a video about the struggles that teams are going to potentially have getting to Australia now. What media in the F1 community, I'm talking media proper, media podcasts, who do you think any of them are actually going to talk about this in a way that is beneficial?
I think they'll focus more on how it's affecting the teams than anything. It's very, and I look at that based on if you remember the first year that we raced in Saudi Arabia, where there was the attack on a fuel depot a few kilometers away from the track, and the coverage we got there was almost purely on the safety of the teams, the safety of the drivers, the safety of spectators, and that containment circle. They didn't focus on any of the larger politics outside of that. I have a feeling that will be the case again, where the focus will be purely on the spectators, the teams, the personnel, and everybody's safety, and also getting equipment in. I know there was a commission meeting today, I believe, sorting out new travel arrangements and help that can be provided there, because obviously the Strait of Hormuz is closed. So there's going to be a lot of freight difficulties. And I don't think people realize how much F1 stuff is shipped by boat. That's actually quite a lot of freight goes that way, because flying all their equipment
It would be astronomically expensive,
especially in the cost cap era, because that is one of the things that goes in your cost cap. So that could create a lot of issues. As well as we have these new sustainable fuels that teams are required to use, and some of those will be late getting out. I do wonder if that's going to hurt anyone who, or change. Well, everything had to be homologated by the first, so I imagine we would have heard something if something wasn't homologated. But you do wonder if teams are going to struggle to get fuel requirements met. There's a lot of
There's a
I want to
lot of
say this as
logistics.
respectfully as possible. I'm going to try to keep to just the logistical elements of this because there are way too many things I think and have to say on this situation that I do not want to air on this podcast as much as we like to share our personal feelings on here. I think there are limits to that. And I believe when you start talking about wars and people dying, that's one of those cases. I don't think this is the platform for that. So understand, I'm not, when I talk about the logistical issues, I'm not devaluing anything else that's going on. But I think this is a platform to where we go out to a lot of different people. And while normally I think it is important that we share opinions and beliefs, I think in situations like this, A, it can be dangerous, and B, I just don't think it's correct. So just focusing on the logistical elements, it is going to be a very difficult couple of months for teams because of a lot of their Eastern Hemisphere freight will be affected by this because teams tend to separate freight by hemisphere and where things are going. You'll have stuff, already showing up
In
for,
Vegas and Coda.
well, and like you have freight already showing up for the Canadian race that will be round 6 this year. In you have things that are central to Europe and then things that are central to, so it's almost split up in like 3 ways. You have your eastern, your western, and then your central where most of the teams are based. And a lot of this eastern freight is going to be affected. I feel really bad for WEC even more than F1 because oh, that's a difficult situation to deal with, and one of the places that is more in danger than others and puts a really tough situation because you're not talking about 11 F1 teams. You're talking about an entire WEC grid, multiple drivers, and the teams that support them, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a
There's a
lot of
lot of
staff.
cars.
Yeah, that's a lot of staff. That's a lot of equipment. And that's a lot of people in danger if you make bad decisions. And I think it's a difficult situation to manage. And I really don't see how WEC is going to run the test or their first race. I just don't. I don't see how the Bahrain and really any Middle Eastern races are going to run this year. I just don't see it. Maybe later in the year, because Saudi's towards the end of the calendar this year, isn't it? Or is Qatar at the end of the calendar? I forget which ways they switched it. I guess it would help if I looked it up. Okay, so Saudi is the early one. So Bahrain and Saudi back to back. Then we go Miami, Canada. So I mean, maybe you could cut into the summer break and create a early season break before Miami. But it's just hard for me to believe that we're actually going to get these races in the current climate. Because you're talking
Yeah.
April. You're talking back-to-back weekends in April. Just a little over a month away.
And it's not like F1 can easily just divert shipping freight and have it arrive on time.
Well,
Or
and if
even,
it's not safe for the teams to be there, it's just not safe for the teams to be there. You can't put you can't put lives in danger for a sporting event. I don't care how much we care about the sport. If it is not safe for personnel to be there, they can't be there.
and we're also not talking about the fact that Australia is this week. We're recording on Monday, March 2nd.
Is it this
Uh,
week? I thought it was
yeah,
next week.
no, it's
Is
this
it
week.
this week?
It's this week. It's race week,
Why is
baby. Let's
why
go.
is why is my brain not? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's this week. First
Son
practice
of a
starts on
bitch.
Thursday. But the thing we're not talking about now is that for pretty much every team on the grid, that area of the world is a layover zone to get to Australia. There are
Yeah.
other paths. There are other paths. They're severely more inconvenient in terms of getting personnel and stuff to
Well, and
Australia.
supposedly that is some of what was discussed today is trying to figure out how to safely get personnel places.
Yeah, but also like it's just not good. Um and there's also what, two teams that have personnel in the area right now on top of Pirelli staff that are currently
Yeah,
stuck in the area because of like,
Mercedes and another team.
yeah, because the air travel is shut down there. So
Yeah, and Pirelli was supposed to do a tire test with Mercedes and McLaren, and there are some. At last knew there was still some staff stuck there from both Mercedes, McLaren, Pirelli, and F1.
yeah, I was watching Kim Illman's video and he said Mercedes, or he said McLaren. I don't know if he mentioned Mercedes or not, but
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
I know
it's
McLaren has
Mercedes,
people there.
McLaren, and Pirelli as of oh, what would that be? 344? Or nope, nope. The latest update would have been at 411
Our time or
uh
their time?
uh Eastern time.
Okay.
4:11 p.m. Eastern time. All attempts to get them out have not succeeded. And part of that reason, and it's something we were talking about pre-show, is the, there are only two ways out of Bahrain: the airport and a singular highway over a waterway. Not neither is ideal in this situation, and you can't take the massive amount of stuff that needs to be flown through that would be the amount of money that they would spend driving all that stuff to another airport if they even have enough vehicles to accomplish that would
It wouldn't
be
even be
horrendous.
vehicles, yes, but like semis. Like it's gonna take
Yeah.
an effort to do that. But also you got to think like the independent companies that run like cargo container trucking and stuff like that are probably not going to be readily available.
Well, and how far you would have to drive these to get to open airspace isn't
Yeah,
logistically possible.
no,
It's
because
it's
free practice is on Thursday.
yeah. So
There, I feel like, well, FIA, well, Ben Salam made a post on FIA socials today. I'm going to say this as respectfully as possible. It fucking sucked. Like,
I honestly don't give two shits what he has to say because, as we've talked, his brother is a pedophile
well, yeah,
who
yeah.
is in the Epstein files. So I don't trust anything he says to carry weight. But
If you're
at
just
the same
joining,
time, this is an impossible situation.
yeah. Well, I will say if you're just joining for the first time, go back 2 episodes. We talked about it at length. Uh,
A lot of length. The
at a
whole
lot of
episode.
length. So yeah, go back and listen. If you've listened before, you're aware that we've talked about it. Um, but it talked a lot about that, like racing in Bahrain and or like Qatar and Bahrain. It didn't talk about the difficulties that could dramatically affect Australia, which is this week. Like 2 days from now is when the season starts. And I felt that was extremely tone tone deaf, I guess is not the right way to put it, but it's the only thing that's coming to my mind. It lacked urgency in the fact it just felt like a political statement that some shitty dictator would make, you know.
Now, a good person to follow from a driver's perspective, and God, I feel so bad for this dude because he's also going to have to deal with it with Weck, is Nick DeVries was supposed to be doing McLaren's Pirelli test. He is stuck there. He has been sharing updates on social media.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I didn't know that.
yeah, they're basically trapped in a hotel. The everyone who is involved in the testing is just trapped in a hotel right now. Well, hotels. I shouldn't say a hotel. They're in different. Not everybody's in the same hotel, but uh, Nick DeVries has been at least posting to social media. I think in part trying to keep people from panicking too much, but this is a real situation. Like there are real personnel and members of teams stuck in a pretty crappy situation.
Yeah. What what kind of damage do you think this could do to F1 if they don't handle it properly?
I don't think a lot. I think the main thing right now is just because it's not a problem of F1's doing, and it's a situation where no matter what you do, this is going to be a terrible situation. There is no way around it. So I don't. The only way this looks bad on F1 is if they purposely go into a dangerous situation and something bad happens. I would like to think F1 is smarter than that. And as much credit as I don't give the FIA, I think they are smarter than that. I think there's a, and I think we'll get a real good window into it with what happens with WEC. If you want to know what's going to happen with Formula One, what happens with WEC will give a good example of that. Because they will be dealing with this before F1 has to deal with it. And
It could
their
send
reactions will kind of show you what the FIA, how much risk level is required for the FIA to cancel something. And I think that will show a lot of the feelings on this. My gut feeling is that that the two Middle Eastern races, they will try to reschedule them for later in the year.
That would have to extend the season or cut the silly season summer break short.
I think you would have to cut the summer break because you would like to put it with while you're already over in the Middle East with Qatar, but that's a triple header, so you can't. So you can't really add anything to that. The only place that makes sense to have an addition of multiple races is the summer break. And I don't know if drivers are going to agree with that. And this is the problem. You're dealing with two races that spend a lot of money to be on the calendar. They're not going to like being kicked off the calendar. So they're going to want rescheduled. But the drivers aren't exactly going to be happy to give up their summer break. I know Max won't, because Max has plans.
Yep.
You would assume. I don't know though. It could still. It's a fucked situation. It's COVID all over again, but with different reasoning. Like when we were going, it feels eerie to me for different reasons, because the week leading up to Australia, when the COVID outbreak was happening, it was like, shit, could we actually cancel some races? And then by the time practice was supposed to start, they weren't opening the gates, and we're like, oh shit, are they actually going to cancel this race? Weirdly enough, McLaren were involved in that one too, because they're the one that had members of their team get COVID. Now they're the ones with members of their teams, one of the two with members of their team stuck in Bahrain right now. The question that hasn't really been answered that I've seen is what personnel is there. We know none of the regular drivers. I think it was just reserve drivers, reserve and possibly young drivers. But also, you know what I'm really worried about too?
What?
The F2 and F3 teams. They don't have F1 money. And some of them are Middle Eastern based. Are we going to get a full F2 and F3 grid with all parts, equipment, and everything? Because the F1 teams at least have money to make things happen. You know, at worst, F1 could be like, all right, we're not going to we're going to write off the extra money you had to spend on the cost cap. So that's not going to count against you. The teams have the money to do this. There's a reason there's a cost cap. The teams have the money to spend on this. The F2 and F3 teams don't.
I wouldn't say every F1 team has the money to do this. There's a
They
reason
do.
the cost cap exists, is because the better teams had more money, leading to the back of the grid not having enough money.
Being willing to spend it and having it are two different things.
That's fair.
Haas have the money.
Well, we all know how we feel about Gene Haas, so.
Yeah. Well, they're the ones that, up until the new cost cap, weren't even, like, for the first couple of years of the cost cap, weren't even meeting the cost cap. But it wasn't because they didn't have money. It's because they chose not to spend money. They were only spending money that came in through sponsorships and no money out of pocket. Which, whatever, that's a whole nother conversation. But they have the money if required to do these things. But it's some of these F2 teams, some of the smaller, and you even think of teams like Van Amsport coming from the Netherlands. That's a really tough trip if you have to avoid that chunk of the map.
Yeah.
that that's a really, really expensive redirect.
And they also they don't necessarily have sponsorships with logistics companies
And they're
or
already a team that has had rumors of struggling financially.
yeah. I mean, coming from the Nordic is not easy.
Yeah. So it's things like that like are in my mind of like, I think the F1 teams, the only question with the F1 teams is really, do they get the personnel back in time from the test? And if not, who was over there and how does that affect the teams? And B, how much money did they have to spend to redirect shipping or get parts out, and are there changes to practice schedules that need to get made or something like that? Do we need to run an extra long practice on Saturday because not all the parts got in on Friday? Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
That's the most this is going to affect those teams. The F2 and F3 teams, I hope it's not a thing to where there are teams that can't afford to be there, or this hurts their ability. Like, oh, we got to finish in fifth this year because of this extra expense, or we're going to go bankrupt. You know what I mean? Like, I worry about that a lot.
And that would
A
be
lot.
extremely damaging to
Yeah.
F1 indirectly because F3 and F2 typically feed directly into F1 at some point.
Yeah. And you're trying to create more and more of that synergy. And, this is a big race for them to be involved in. Last year was the first year that F2 and F3 both took part in Australia. This is a big deal for young drivers. And it's wild. It's wild. It's there's a lot going into this first race. A lot. And it'd be enough if it was just the craziness of these new regulations. But now you have a massive world conflict directly in the center between where you are and where you're going.
And where you're supposed to be a couple weeks later.
Yeah, and where some of your people still are.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. It's a lot. It's got to be stressful for all the teams. And some of the drivers stuck there. You have to imagine that this is, look at Nick DeVries. He drives in Formula E. He drives in WEC. This is got to be greatly affecting his life and career right now. And that's just one of the drivers that we know is stuck there right now.
Yeah. On the topic of extremely difficult times, let's talk about Ashton. Let's talk about how somebody had, and I'm going to clarify this very, very purposefully, an opinion that Ashton will participate in qualifying and will run a few laps during the Aussie Grand Prix and then retire the car. This is an opinion, so we don't typically talk about opinions and even rumors in a lot of cases because they can be broadly misconceived. But I do think that given Aston Martin's struggles leading up to the Australian Grand Prix, this is a very valid opinion and something that I'm curious what your thoughts are on how Aston Martin will actually handle the Australian Grand Prix. Because we did see last week that they are only going to the Australian Grand Prix because they have to.
So before I go fully into this, there is one slight benefit that Aston has with being with Honda. And that's Honda's engine project is based in Japan, which currently is unaffected by the shipping problems. So if they can get an emergency fix in time, shipping it won't be a problem.
But they
So
have 3
that's the
days.
good news for Aston. The bad news is, last anyone had been told, the problem with the Aston engine is actually a battery, and it's a vibration that they believe the engine is creating, but they can't figure out what is the actual cause of this vibration. And it's if they run in any sort of a mode that has real power, the vibration is so bad that it's destroying batteries. And because they don't know where the problem's coming from, they don't know how to fix it, because fixing one part could make things worse. So they've been working with Honda's, engine group in Japan, trying to pinpoint the problem and then create a fix to the problem. But they're vastly running out of time. And if that problem doesn't get fixed, they can't fully charge their battery without being in danger. So
What is the likelihood that they don't complete the Australian Grand Prix on purpose in your mind?
on purpose, I guess that depends on how you word it. I think neither car will finish that race because of reliability.
But to save the car and not cost any more money than absolutely needs to be spent, do you
what I
think
could
they would
see
retire?
happening is, if they can't figure out a way to fix it. All right, say worst case scenario happens. Say Aston runs 3 practice sessions and can't stop this problem. I think the likelihood would be them trying to run in a low mode in the race to see if they can pick up places off. We're expecting a lot of retirements, but like with the amount of technical difficulties that took place in the test, it would be a shock if more than 15 cars finish this race. And I wouldn't be surprised if you only had 11, 10 cars finishing the race. It wouldn't shock me. It would be horrific, but it wouldn't shock me at the same point, because teams really seem to be struggling with keeping their cars from eating themselves. I could see them try to keep running, if possible, in a lower mode. And if they start getting any warning signs, just immediately box the cars to retire. I don't think they'll pull all right, let's go off the line and pit next lap. I don't think that's the case. But because the thing about that claim that was made that I don't necessarily agree with is, there's no requirement for them to run a certain amount of laps. You can retire on the first lap of the race. You can miss the start of the race.
What about the 100%, 107% rule?
I don't think they'll come foul of that, because you would have to be about 6.5 seconds off the pace. And even then, they can rule to allow you into the race. It's not a black and white rule to like, oh, if you do this, you're not allowed. Because we've seen situations where teams can apply for waivers. If a driver crashes in qualifying and never sets up a lap, technically they didn't fulfill the 107% rule. So then they get a waiver. This is a little bit different because it would be on pure pace. But I would be surprised if they're 6.5 seconds off of the pace. I would. especially in Q1. Maybe Q3, I could see them being a lot, but all they have to worry about is Q1 and practice, because practice gets taken into an account when you're looking for the waiver. They take your practice into account then for the waivers. So I, especially with Fernando being one of the drivers and Lance being one of the drivers, and they're both experienced veterans, I don't see that rule becoming an issue. But
Weirder things have happened.
Yeah, there is 0% of me that thinks both Aston Martins or either Aston Martin's going to finish this race. I don't.
Do you want to put a prediction in on what lap they go out on? Each of them?
Well, Lance, it depends his mood. It could be turn 1. I don't. It's hard to tell without seeing how bad it is in practice. Maybe they cooked. Maybe they figured out something and there's already something on the way from Japan as a fix. Maybe they came up with a stopgap for the time being of running in a medium mode and creating something that at least stabilizes. Maybe. I don't know. And we also saw that there were I think Honda's a little angry, and there were some things coming out in the Japanese media that were blaming Adrian Newey for the problem of them basically saying when Adrian Newey came in and became in control of the project, he completely changed some elements, and Honda didn't have time to react to that, and they think that's part of the issue. Which, if that's the case, that's a big screw up by Newey, but honestly not unexpected because we knew he and Cal had a blowout, and that's why the separation happened and he got handed the team principal role. So maybe directly after that, he made changes that Cal didn't want to make. And we know Honda is not great acting quickly. They're good when they have time to build, as they did with the Red Bull, working with, what at the time was Toro Rosso a year before getting involved with the Red Bull project. That they're very good at what they do, but they like to do it in measured steps, not speed through the process. And it seems like Newey is trying to speed through the process. And we're seeing the side effects of that.
Yeah. I mean, speeding through the process also leads to a terrible team dynamic. So we talked about that several episodes ago. But team camaraderie and team culture is really important for a winning team. Adrian Newey isn't the kind of person that inspires confidence with motivation. He inspires a work hard, work 24/7 kind of culture, because that's just who he is. That's who he is, and I'm not knocking him.
Yeah, he's a by example person. He's not. There's a reason him and Christian Horner were such a duo for so long. Is one person was the talker, one person was the sleeves up, digging into the back of the car person. And I think Aston's kind of missing that, but also I think Aston also has bigger problems. And I know the Fernando Alonso might leave thing. I don't think that's their biggest problem. I think their biggest problem is if Lance becomes disinterested. Lance Stroll has been in F1 a long time. He went from what started as a decent Williams car to what quickly degraded into an embarrassment, then to a Racing Point team recovering from financial fraud that his dad bought, and it has never become what it was promised to be. Lance is now one of the longest tenured drivers on the grid and is showing extreme signs of frustration. Might have been the most frustrated I've ever seen him in testing. He sounded like Fernando. They're asking about the car, and he's like, well, the weather's nice.
I'm going to interrupt you here real quick because we're talking about Lance. It's the perfect segue, or I guess perfect time to bring it up. Did you see? I saw this as a reel on Instagram, I think yesterday. Formula One, or Lance is the only driver that Formula One doesn't follow.
Yes, I saw that.
And I literally just fact checked it.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's true. Formula One does not follow Lance Stroll. And it's crazy.
Part of the reason Lawrence has put so much money into Aston is because of Lance.
Oh, yeah. That's the reason he bought the team.
He has sunk millions and millions and millions into what has become a dumpster fire. If Lance bounces, what happens to that team?
Do you think he would bounce before his dad ever sold the team, though?
Yes. I think Lance is a lot closer to leaving F1 than anyone realizes. Because you're stuck in this generation till what, 2030?
Yeah.
And if it's this bad, and if they don't improve it by the end of the year, I think Fernando's gone, and I don't think Lance is far behind him.
Well, I guess I framed it pretty weirdly, I guess. Do you think Lawrence Stroll would sell the team because his son wants to leave?
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying is like, what do you think Lance would leave without his father selling the team?
Yes. I think his leaving could make his father sell the team.
Okay. I mean, at that point, what the hell do they have? Nothing. And they paid millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to get Newey in.
You know,
and it's more of a dumpster fire than it was before.
This is the point that sometimes you have to make about F1, and it's the point I make about Ferrari a lot. Just because you spend money doesn't mean you did anything. Ferrari spends money all the time. They haven't won a championship since Kimi Räikkönen. Meanwhile, the sport's been dominated by an energy drink and Mercedes for the last decade. And now McLaren has the chance to do so. Another team that was at the back of the grid and recovered when Ferrari still hasn't. I mean, you know, this wasn't a point we were supposed to talk about, but can you imagine Ferrari if Mercedes wins this year?
That would be bad.
Because it would be the third time Ferrari has watched a team fall behind them and then come back and win a championship in a row. Because they had to watch it with Red Bull when Red Bull fell back in the Renault era with Daniel and Vettel leaving Red Bull for Ferrari, which I think a lot of people forget. Vettel won immediately in Ferrari.
True.
But never won a championship. Watched Mercedes dominate that era. Then watched Red Bull go from behind Ferrari to above them. In what was it, Max Verstappen's second race ever, the Toro Rossos outperformed the Red Bulls. Wild.
Very
Wow.
wild.
So then Red Bull recovers to go on their second championship run. You had to watch them take over Jaguar's garbage team and eventually build a 4-time champion. Fall to the midfield basically with the Renault engine, come back up to dominate again with another 4-time drivers champion. Watch McLaren come from literally the back of the grid at starting off the season with a race where they had to pit every 3 laps for hydraulic pressure. Like literally a disaster. Then they come back, win 2 constructors and a drivers. Now, can you imagine if Mercedes wins this year? Mercedes will have went back behind Ferrari and then rebounded again, while Ferrari still hasn't won shit. That'd be wild. Or if somebody not Mercedes, Red Bull, or McLaren, or even if it's Red Bull, say Red Bull wins this year. That's another champion different from the previous year that's not a Ferrari.
And not Ferrari main team, because I feel like they would be happy that one of their client customers won a championship with their engine, but they'd be extremely displeased that they couldn't win it with their own car.
Can you imagine if Haas starts outperforming Ferrari?
That would be
or worst case scenario for Ferrari. Can you imagine if Cadillac by the end of the year is on terms with a Ferrari? Do you know how embarrassing that would be? Running their engine under a Cadillac name equaling Ferrari. It'd be horrendous.
It'd be insane. Absolutely.
A lot of heads would roll.
Yeah. Well, not the right ones, but
true. But talking of teams that are getting an advantage, assuming that they get there, in Australia, before we get off here, let's talk about the Mercedes engine upgrade and how big of a deal that's going to be. Supposedly, all the Mercedes teams are getting upgraded and updated engines for Australia, because technically the engines didn't have to be homologated till the 1st of March. So now the very first version of the engine that will be used has increased performance, which somebody on our podcast about testing said, watch, that's not the real Mercedes engine, and they were just doing that so that they could postpone the changes to their engine. And look who looks like they're right.
You were right.
I knew that wasn't their real engine.
You said I was right last podcast. It's only right that I tell you you're right this podcast.
Yeah. I knew they were full of shit, which I'm glad they moved the date forward to when they're going to stop the compression trick. But I knew they were full of shit and that wasn't their real engine.
But do you think the new engine has the compression trick? Because
1,000%.
The deadline changed to June 1st?
Yeah. Now they're going to make sure it has it, because now they have a line in the sand of how long they can run it.
I'm curious about what the kind of chaos that ruling will have on the grid if Mercedes can't figure out how to match the pace without the compression trick.
You know what I am interested in, though? I wonder if the compression has any effect on the energy. Because it is a boost, but if it comes at the cost of extra energy, could that turn into a negative?
It definitely could. Definitely could.
I'm not smart enough technically to understand if that's even a possibility. That I have okay knowledge of the technical runnings of F1 cars, but not enough to know if that is a plausible question or a plausible wonder. But
I
I
have an
do wonder
engineering
if
brain, and I still feel the
I,
same way.
yeah, I do wonder if it'll have an effect on their ability to regenerate energy and how much energy they use. Either a positive or a negative effect. It could help it, it could hurt it, it could do. I don't see a world where extra power doesn't somehow involve an effect on the energy, whether that's the ability to store more or the need to use more.
It sounds like there's a compensation point with the new regs regarding engine power and battery power. And that seems like it's where a lot of teams are struggling because their batteries don't have the longevity to last through a straight. I would assume it's the same for Mercedes engines where they might be able to get more engine power, but once this, rule amendment happens, it could I view it as being very not good for them.
It's hard to say without knowing some of the internal components, though, because there are ways that having that extra compression ratio, in theory, if you might do something that helped you regenerate power too, in at least in my head, in theory, there's ways that could work, but it's hard to say. And there is a risk of them running, of all these teams running this engine for the first time, and there being unforeseen problems because this engine hasn't been fitted and tested on any cars that isn't a Mercedes. So that there, and if there are unforeseen problems, it's not like you can ship out backups.
Yeah.
There are going to be no emergency parts this weekend. Getting standard parts are the emergency, which also means if you crash in practice, you might do some detrimental harm to your team.
Yeah.
Because this is the race people are going to come to with the least amount of spares, just in general, because it's the beginning of a new regulation cycle. And there's going to be a lot of changes. So you don't have a lot of spares because you had to work to the last minute to get this stuff ready. And that was before half the Middle East was being bombed. So there's not going to be a lot of spares. I don't think Aston's going to be the only team in trouble with spares. This is going to be a tricky weekend.
Yeah. It will be.
Very tricky.
It'll be exciting, though, I think. I mean, even though I've went on record saying it could be boring,
I think boring's the one thing that it won't be.
Yeah. I've kind of changed my tune on that because there are so many variables that have so much control over how everything happens. I don't think it will be boring. I think it'll be really eye-opening.
And we're at a place that randomly has crazy weather that impacts unexpectedly.
Yes.
So yes. add that little snippet on there as well.
And it's also the first race of the season where we actually get to see the cars at full capacity. So, just like Mercedes released their sleeper engine yesterday to their customer teams, we might see some changes in other teams that have things.
Yeah, that's just the one that we know of.
Yeah.
We don't know what updates other teams have brought, and some of that might depend on what freight gets there and what doesn't.
Yeah, 100%.
And there's There's a lot going into this. So it'll be interesting. It's gonna be worth watching. That's for sure.
Yes.
I did notice for any of our U.S. viewers something I was worried about, but I think I don't have to be worried about now. I noticed when I was looking at my Apple TV today, there are two different, what looks like two different broadcasts listed: the Sky Sports and then an Apple TV, which I am willing to bet is probably the same as the F1 TV broadcast. So I think that's going to be available through the Apple app, as well as if you have signed into the F1 TV app using your Apple ID.
I noticed that a few days ago, and I thought I'd messaged it to you, but apparently I forgot. Yeah, I noticed that with mine. I saw that there's two different like feeds per se of like scheduled
Yeah.
telecasts, and one is Apple TV, but I'm again assuming that's Formula One's like broadcast team. So hopefully that's the case.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then
and
the
then
other
there's
one's Sky
Sky
Sports,
Sports. Yeah, and
which, yeah.
honestly surprised that they pulled Sky Sports over, mainly just because
Um,
we don't like Sky Sports, but I'm not surprised because it's Sky Sports. Like they're
well,
huge.
and it's the same thing ESPN did, where they just did the simulcast, and it's the simple way to do it.
Well,
Then you don't
ESPN
have
just
to
used
hire.
Sky Sports. They didn't.
Well, and that's basically what Apple's doing, is they're going to have the Sky Sports broadcast available, and then the F1 TV broadcast.
Yeah, but ESPN didn't have the Apple or the F1 broadcast available.
Yeah, because they didn't integrate with the F1 app. That's the big difference. This time around is Apple has integrated the F1 app into their platform, which is what ESPN should have done, but they didn't.
Briefly before we end, the one thing that makes me worried is that I haven't seen any prior F1 content available on Apple TV, and that was a
Yeah, it
huge
doesn't
part
look
of
like
this.
there is.
Yeah, I haven't seen any. Like,
No, I can only find it on my F1 TV app. I mean, granted, you can sign into the F1 TV app using an Apple ID, and it just syncs.
I haven't had that be able to work for me, not once.
Yeah, I'm still using the F1 TV app to
And I'm using
watch
your
everything.
F1 TV app, so
Yeah,
because
yeah,
my Apple TV login doesn't work.
That's weird.
Yeah,
I had to like
it shows up on my
go through
desktop.
a whole email process, but whatever, it worked finally.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
So last thing, we don't typically do them, but I think at least we should do it for the winner. We don't have to go in depth beyond that, but I think this year we should at least do something for who we think is going to win the race. But I want to make it a little bit fun.
Okay, I'm listening.
So let's keep track of this. At the end of the year, whoever loses has to buy the winner a new team kit for the team of their choice.
Team kit as like the whole kit or just like a t-shirt?
The shirt.
Okay. Just making sure, because like shirts are $160, bro.
Yeah.
Like...
whoever loses has to buy the other person that next year's team kit for their team.
I'm shaking with you.
Virtual handshake. But we're just going to do it purely for the winner. You get a point for getting the winner right, or you don't get anything.
For the whole season, or just for the first race?
For each race. We'll do it for each race. Just the winner. Just the winner of each race. You get a point if you're right. No points if you're not.
Okay. Easy.
So for race 1, Hopium.
You better not make me go first, because
Hopium. I'm doing it. I'm going against everything that I think is actually going to happen. Max.
That's not surprising.
It is because I know
You
better. I know
you
better. I know
you
he's not
hyped
going to
it
win.
though. You hyped it as if you're gonna pick a different team. That was bullshit.
No, because I know he's not going to win. This is a track that he has rarely gotten good results at. It's I don't think when there's been a new regulation cycle, Max has ever finished a race there. His first F1 race there, he didn't finish. When they changed the rules in 2022, he didn't finish that race. It's likely he's not going to finish this race, so of course I'm going to say he's going to win. Against
Okay.
I don't even know if he's if I had to bet $100 on it, I would bet Max wouldn't be on the podium. So I'm going to bet him to be the winner because I'm an idiot.
You might be shocked at my answer. Actually, I think you will be.
Nope, because I already know what your answer is.
You don't, though. I'm going to say George Russell.
And I knew your answer.
Really?
Yep.
It was between Piastri and George Russell, and I picked George.
Because I knew if I was stupid, you would go smart. You went with the person who should win the race.
Have you ever seen my tism? I'm always going to go smart.
But I knew especially if I went stupid, you would go smart because it was almost guaranteeing you a point.
But it hurts. It hurts to say George Russell would win the Australian Grand Prix.
I mean, it'll hurt less when you're wearing an Audi shirt next year.
Yeah, I mean, come next podcast, I'll be wearing an Audi hat as long as it gets here on time. But that'd be great if I get an Audi shirt. That'd be fantastic.
I keep picking with my heart. You probably will.
But if you're a longtime listener, you know I have a very aggressive and avid desire to get George Russell to send me a cease and desist. And so for me to say he's going to win the Australian Grand Prix is like, oh, man, I just knocked down all the work I did over the last year. But
he's probably going to win it.
I'll take the point. I'll take the point.
It's going to be a Mercedes-powered car that wins.
Yeah. And that
Australians struggle in Austria, so it's probably not going to be Oscar. Could be Lando.
Well, you said Austria, not Australia.
You know what I meant.
Yeah, but still, I had to point it out. Yeah, it sucks to not pick Oscar. I'm usually wearing a McLaren hat. I'm actually wearing a full Red Bull kit today, which is wild. But that's the only team I have a full kit for. So, yeah, I say George.
Dick.
You're welcome.
It's been an unhinged day, to say the least. Hey, at least we got through the episode without the cat turning off my internet again. That's a plus.
Yeah, dude, after last week, because I have the other podcast that I do, that was a nightmare, and it took 12 and a half hours to edit the episode. So I'm grateful that your cat didn't ruin your internet, so I didn't have to spend 12 and a half hours editing this video.
She gets lonely when I record and decides to shut everything off, no matter how many times I try to put up a barrier between her and the off switches.
Meanwhile, her brother is just knocked out for this entire time we've been. Like, we did an hour and a half pre-show, and he's been asleep the entire time through the pre-show and through the episode. It's wild.
I can't remember the last time she slept that long in one sitting. She power naps and then zooms around until she power naps again. She's a handful. She's got orange cat energy.
Well, so does Peak, but Peak also does that in the middle of the night, not during waking hours.
She does it both. She likes her 4 a.m. zoomies as much as she likes her 2 p.m. zoomies.
Well, Peak's zoomies are from midnight to 6 a.m. And he consistently fights with a paper bag and loses every single time.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. She likes to pull my so I have a deviated septum and I have to wear nose strips to sleep, and she likes to dig the old ones out of the trash can. And my cat thinks it's a human and likes to get on two paws and walk across the room with things in her hand and throw them so she can go fetch them. Because apparently I have an alien.
well, on today's episode of F1 Unhinged Cat Dad episode, I think that's where we'll end it.
Uh, some episodes are great and some are this one.
I feel like this was great. We made over an hour out of literally nothing. So
That is a plus. That is a plus.
yeah, yeah.
And hey, I laughed enough that maybe our thumbnail won't look like I'm the angriest person on earth for 1 week.
I'm
Just
just gonna
maybe 1 week where the thumbnail doesn't look angry.
I'm gonna just make it look angry out of spite now.
Next week, I'm just going to show up with tape on my cheeks so I'm smiling the whole time, no matter what. So maybe, just maybe, one of our YouTubes doesn't look like I'm the angriest person on planet Earth.
I can just put a emoji smiley face over your face if that helps. It's easy. I make our thumbnails, so
It's amazing how angry my face can be when I'm laughing. It's hilarious. I could be smiling inside and then see a screenshot of my face like, why do I look like I was contemplating murdering you all podcast? It's wild. It's wild how angry I look compared to how I feel when I'm saying things.
after over a decade of friendship with you, there's been plenty of times where you've probably wanted to murder me, but I don't think our podcast has ever been a reason to do so.
No, it's wild. My resting angry face is legendary at this point.
But yeah, that's where we'll end today.
Yeah, that sounds like a good place to leave. Once again, we are F1 Unhinged, living up to our name like always. I've been Josh.
I've been Tyler.
Thank you guys for tuning in.